when we first launched it was finally ... a fast hand dryer. Okay? So I'm solving the frustration people have.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. I have Denis Gagnon, president of Excel Dryer. Denis, thanks so much for coming on today.
Happy to be here.
Well, Denis, it's the Made in America podcast. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
We manufacture electric hand dryers, and I'm going to adjust part two of this and tell you why we needed to make the accelerator hand dryer. So when I bought the business 25 years ago, there were two harsh realities awaiting me. Number one, we manufactured a product people don't like using. Oh, think about it. People do not like using a hand dryer. They say, oh, it doesn't work, takes too long. They get animated and have the gesture of wiping their hands on their clothing. So they passionately disliked using the product we were manufacturing. That's not a good place.
Was it that white box on the wall with the silver button?
A lot of times, most of them had push buttons, and then we went to automatic sensor, but no faster. So that was an issue. And for that reason, hand dryers are specified in less than 10% of public restrooms. Most public restrooms have paper towels. Now, that's despite the fact that converting from paper towels to a hand dryer is an 80% cost savings at the time. It's a source reduction alternative. You're not using precious resources to create paper towels only to dispose of them in a landfill after use. Mm-hmm. So again, good for the environment, saves you money. People still hate using them. So that's where we were. And the other issue, we were officially the second largest manufacturer of hand dryers in the United States. Sounds good so far. Well, World Dryer was 10 times our size. So being number two didn't really help a lot. So those were the two realities I faced when I finished buying the company. And in 1998, we convened a strategic planning session and set on a path to develop a hand dryer for the 21st century. We didn't have a name for it yet, but I brought in a company called Invent Resources to help us with the R&D process. And this is 4 scientist, inventor partners. Yeah. And just to give you a sense for their qualifications, George Friedman, who was one of the 2 partners that worked closely with us on the project, was the retired head of R&D for Raytheon.
Oh, wow. That's a big
very
deal.
Credentialed guy, very, very capable. And they were actually characters. They would go to a chalkboard and scribble out an equation, and then the other one would get up and erase it. That's not right. and swear at each other in Yiddish, and it was. They were actually at times very amusing to deal with, but. Yeah, they knew their stuff, the math and the physics calculations, and what can you do in terms of available wattage, what kind of air velocity can you generate, how should you direct it. There was a lot involved in it, and my plant manager, Tom Cage, who just retired this fall after 47 years with Excel Dryer, by the way, being plant manager was really his part-time job at that stage because he was developing and testing prototype configurations for what was to become Accelerator, and we put literally thousands of hours into this.
I bet.
So fast forward 3 years, Accelerator is born, and my tagline when we first launched it was finally ... a fast hand dryer. Okay? So I'm solving the frustration people have. You know, our marketing guys, they had different taglines in mind, and I said, no, we're using this, and we did use it over and over and over for the next 8 years, because really we were changing the industry. But how do people know? You got to try it.
You got to try it.
So I can't tell you how many trade shows we went to, and you have to coax people out of the aisle. Oh, hand dryer? I hate the damn thing. Well, that's why you got to try this one. And so I developed a trade show booth that had a sink, the conventional model on one side and the new accelerator on the other side. So, and I'd stand there with a stopwatch and say, okay, now dry your hands with the old one. And they go, yeah, this is why I hate this stupid thing. You know? All right, well, now try this. And it would be like, oh, wow. You know what?
This
is actually drying my hands. I use this. So we just had a lot of fun with it. It was a great show and tell product. And an accelerator just took off from there. And it is now the best-selling hand dryer in the world, by the way.
That's what I was about to ask. So that the punchline at the end is it worked.
It actually dries your hands. And
that's a very important characteristic for a hand dryer.
And now from a marketing standpoint, now I got nice bullets. Okay, not an 80% cost savings, it's a 95% cost savings because it's on a third of the time. So 3 times faster, which is the message of, hey, this is a fast hand dryer. And then all the environmental benefits that go with it as well. So
there we go.
And
so what was well, let me actually back way up. What made you buy the business initially? You bought the number 2, which was like 1/10 the size of number 1. So basically just another in an industry that no one really liked and wanted more of. But something said to you, Dennis, you know what I need to do? I need to buy this business and change the world. Like, what was that?
I didn't quite know how bad it was about the business, but I was vice president of international at Hasbro. And Hasbro had merged with or purchased Milton Bradley, which this is a funny merger. Milton Bradley was 4 times the size of Hasbro, but Hasbro bought Milton Bradley. Why? Do you hear of Transformers?
Yeah, the toy, yeah,
They launched Transformers and it just exploded. So Milton Bradley had all of the resources to help Hasbro succeed. We had 13 international subsidiaries, so they hit the ground running by combining forces. But when I went to Hasbro, it was, I don't know, I spent too much time in meetings.
Not enough time doing stuff, which is surprising for a company that's a lot smaller.
Yeah, but they're very marketing. You got to give them a lot of credit. They were very marketing oriented. But I mean, I just didn't like sitting around in meetings all day. I just lost interest, and I wanted to move back. I moved from Western Mass to Rhode Island, and I worked for the CEO of the company. So it was a good job. It was a great career, but I knew I wouldn't retire there, and our roots are Western Mass, and a fellow from Milton Bradley, who was a good friend of mine, knew that the Carrolls, the former owners of XL Dryer, were looking to sell the business, and he put us in touch. And I said, you know what, I had to try this.
Give it a shot.
Yeah.
So let's actually pull on that thread for a minute. So you worked for Milton Bradley originally. Was that where you started your career?
No. I had I had a number of. I was actually an accountant in my earlier career, controller for a couple of companies, and then I what year would it have been? 1981. I came in an interview with Jim Shea, who was the CEO of Milton Bradley at the time, and his son Tom was a friend of my brother-in-law's.
There you go.
And he said, my job is coming open because I'm going to go run the play school division because Milton Bradley owned play school. And so he was going to be going to Chicago. And he said, why don't you come talk about my... So I did. I met Jim Shea, who could be a stern guy, a very, very bright guy, but could be very stern. So we have this great interview, and at the end of the interview, he said, well, what do you think? I said, well, it's too staffy to me. I want a job. I want a line job with people working for me. And I could see his face curling. Like, you stupid ass. You're working for the chairman of the board, president, and chief executive officer of the company. Don't you realize this? So I said, well, okay, all right. No,
I guess I should take this job.
I tell my wife, I said, well, I think I blew that interview, but I got the job offer on Monday morning anyway. And so it was a great 5 years.
That's a great 5 years.
Yeah, it's a great 5 years.
And so when you went, so you decided to kind of go into business for yourself, and
I always wanted to anyway.
okay.
So
And so the Excel dryer opportunity shows up at your doorstep, and then you didn't do the due diligence to know the stats of the business. I'm trying to figure out how you sort of got yourself.
well, there were two partners. One was the factory and admin, and the other did sales and marketing. And Dick Carroll was the one that did the sales and marketing. And I traveled the country with Dick, met all our representatives, went to trade shows, and I just felt like, hey, it needed some energy to grow, and I figured I could provide that. So I
That
thought
was
it was
it.
worth it.
Yeah, well, it certainly has worked out. So I want to talk about the R&D thing, because it was amazing to me. You bought the business. Was the business like making money at the time?
Yeah, but we were spending more money than we were making during the 3 years we were developing.
that's so. Yeah, so I was about to get.
Yeah. Did I remortgage the house? Did I take a new bank?
Yeah,
loan?
that's what I was going to ask you.
I did.
So the
I did
business
all of that.
didn't. So the business didn't generate enough cash to. I mean, because you're saying thousands of hours, 3 years, bringing in consultants, prototyping. I mean, you're putting it all on the line for some vision that. I mean, maybe walk us through that. So you sat down. You said before the business, it just wasn't sustainable, right? You had a product people didn't want to use.
We weren't going to survive into the 21st century if we didn't develop a new product.
Right.
We needed a better mousetrap. We absolutely just had to have it. And what do entrepreneurs do? You got the instinct and you got to have the guts to pursue it. So you go after it.
Go after it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, just walk me through the sort of the process. So you make the decision to go do it. At what point do you realize you're going to have to mortgage the house? I mean, like what? Like
And that happened pretty fast.
did it? Was it pretty quick? You're sort of burning through cash.
Yeah. Yep.
What does the wife say when you come home and say, "Honey, we're going to reinvent the hand dryer industry"?
She stopped opening the mail because of bills and past due notices, and so. But she always had faith. So, but she really would not open the mail.
Yeah, I can believe me. I can imagine. And so were you? I mean, 3 years is a very long time. I mean, in retrospect, right? In hindsight, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I've started a business. I've been through the mortgage, the house stage, and all that.
It feel like forever, believe me.
Yeah, I mean,
especially when you're burning through money. Yes.
Yeah, because the hole is getting deeper, which unless you can really, really see it, the light kind of feels like it's getting further away, not closer.
Yeah. And there were some moments for sure.
What as you're going through the process, you brought in the consultants, like what, I don't know, just walk me through sort of the feelings you're having as you're going through it, and what made you continue to keep going? Like, what is it that were you seeing progress?
Oh, I think we were on the right track. Yeah.
Yeah. And no one even liked hand dryers. So how did you even have the confidence? What was the stats you saw, or what were the guide markers that you thought that even if you could invent it, someone would want it? You know what I'm saying? Like it's sort of like if you think about all that you have to do to invent the electric car, let's say, we already know people like cars. And if you invent an electric car,
you just have that instinct. I said, again, one-off market research. I got to call it what it was, but I thought if we could make a fast hand dryer, we'd sell a lot more of them.
It's just that simple.
It was that simple.
It was that simple.
Yeah.
And so does it happen sort of as a eureka moment where all of a sudden it's sort of not working, the prototypes are like breaking down? Like I'm just trying to think, what was the evolution over the 3 years to get to the point where it finally worked?
Well, again, we tested every geometry known to man as far as air outlet configurations, because I don't want to get overly scientific about it, but just picture you have an airstream, and the further away you get from the air outlet, the more the airstream flares. So what we needed was a
Now, hold on. Go ahead.
So it's flaring, just
Yeah.
picture, okay? So you needed a focused...
In other words, the further I get from the source of the fan, the more
the less velocity there is.
Just the air just gets in the way of the it.
Well, it dissipates. You're losing energy, if you will, and you're not blowing off the water droplets quickly, because you've got to get the water droplets off and then penetrate what's called the boundary layer of moisture on the skin. That's where the final evaporation occurs. But you got to get all that other water out of the way. So you need that focused high velocity airstream, and we ultimately settled on a specific length to circumference, radius,
of the output.
to optimize the the air delivery system, if you will.
Yeah.
So, and again, I didn't say the diameter, but length to diameter ratio, that's built into the two patents. That's one of that was a unique aspect of that product. Yeah.
So, I mean, did you leverage sort of hair dryer tech? Because I mean, seems like there's some parallels, right, between.
Well, just think about a hair dryer now. If a hair dryer, do you know how hot, if you hold your hand real close to that hair dryer, it's really hot.
Yeah.
But when you're drying your hair, how far away is it?
Yeah, gotcha.
So you learn.
Plus, you have the hair between, like, if you ever leave a hair dryer for too long and the hair separates, it starts really to hurt your skin. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, we call it drying comfort, but heat, you do want heat.
Right.
So you get that sensation and feel comfortable when you're drying your hands as well. So.
But the heat is really more about a comfort function than an actually drying function?
It's less important than you might think. It's more, it is psychologically comfortable when you feel heat on your hands.
But it's not part of
it probably would dry your hands 1 or 2 seconds slower if you didn't have heat. That's really not that bad.
Not that bad, yeah.
And if you use, say, like a Dyson air blade, that's not warm air.
Sorry, as I'm thinking. All right.
Not.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So the warmth is really a comfort aspect.
More drying comfort, yeah. And I'm not saying that that's unimportant, because psychologically you do sense it. But,
sure.
But as far as speeding up the drying time, like I said, it makes it 1 or 2 seconds faster.
So once you have the thing made, you realize the day, by the way, that this thing was finished, you must have been so freaking happy.
Well, you don't know, we had to define what dry is. So how do you define dry?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you define dry?
Well, because you have hours and hours of dry your hands till they feel dry, and then we would take pre-weighed paper towels and wipe the residual moisture off the hands and weigh it. So we defined the qualitative my hands feel dry statement into you need 0.2 of a gram or less of residual moisture on the hands. That now we have dried those hands.
Really?
So, oh yeah.
It came down to, what was it?
0.2 of a gram of residual moisture on the hands.
That's when you feel dry.
That's dry. So now we define dry. So now we would test all our configurations to see how long it took for that configuration to get you down to the 0.2 of a gram. And again, when I set out with Invent Resources, I had a goal. I said, hey guys, I want a 10-second hand dryer. I want it to dry your hands in 10 seconds. But again, we had to define dry in the first place, and now we wanted to have hands be dried in 10 seconds. So when we first came out with Accelerator, we said, hand dryers get your hands dry in 30 to 45 seconds.
Oy.
Accelerator gets your hands dry in 10 to 15, 3 times faster. Walk in the park, right? 3 times faster. It's a bold statement, but it was true. So.
And is that where we stand today? 10 to 15 seconds. That's the dry
or
time.
less. There's actually UL publishes standards, and they have. I'm gonna forget the name of it, which my son will kill me. But there's criteria for that process. You have to follow a certain protocol. Product category rules. It's an odd. That's why it's hard to remember.
Yeah, it's hard to remember.
But again, it's very strict. So we were the first company to develop the product category rules for the hand dryer industry, actually, and we worked with a couple of our competitors, a company called Hock Wang from Taiwan, which is a major producer of hand dryers, and so we collaborated on it, actually, and developed the ground rules, and you have to meet certain test requirements to be able to say that your dryer meets the requirements.
The requirements to get there. So it's 1998, the dryer's done. Now it's
Oh, the dryer, no, it's 2001.
Oh,
before the dryer
2001.
got done.
You started in 98.
We started in 98.
But you bought the company in 92?
I started working in a company in 92. I bought it in 97. I bought the real estate in 98. And
then you decided to
then
move.
I just bled money to develop Accelerator for the next 3 years. And then we launched it in 2001.
So the thing, 2001, geez, this is 9/11.
We shipped our first Accelerator hand dryers 9/11.
Literally on September 11th?
9/11, the month.
Okay.
September of 2001. That was 9/11.
Right. That was when you shipped
So the world was a little distracted at the time.
I was going to say, you faced one more hurdle before the whole thing.
But that's literally when we shipped our first Accelerator hand dryers.
Do you remember was there a final day when it was like, this is done? When was the point when you what was the point when you felt because I know that feeling when you're investing and you're working hard and you come in the next day and it still doesn't work and it still doesn't work. Then there's a time where you feel it. I don't know how to describe that, but you
just got the gut instinct. We got it.
We got it. Yeah. Do you remember that day?
You got to get there because you got to order tooling. You got to set up to manufacture it. So we got there. Because we're getting down at 0.2 of a gram of residual moisture on your hands in 10 to 12 seconds. We're there. We're going.
We're going.
Yeah.
And so that must have been well before.
That was in 2001, early 2001.
And so do you remember that? Do you remember the day?
Well, the exact day,
or just where you was in the process on that day? Were you in the lab? What was?
We find the final configuration of the air outlet nozzle. We said, this is the one. All right, this is what we're tooling. But I mean, you got to tool. You got to tool the back plate. You got to tool the blower housing. But again, the critical piece, if you will, the critical component is that air outlet. That the design of that air outlet nozzle was critical. We finally got it right.
That was a good day.
Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, go. Yeah. So you started doing the tooling. So do you make the dryers? So the company's in East Longmeadow, right?
Yes.
And you make the dryers in Western Mass also?
Yes, all dryers are manufactured in East Longmeadow.
That's awesome.
We say made in USA, we mean it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that in a little bit because I think that's another component that's pretty cool that I think is also a unique selling factor. So you get the tooling, you start making them, and then you got to go train all the new reps. Like, tell me about the sort of go-to-market concept because now you've got this. We
didn't have to train it. We went out. It was not fancy. I'm not going to tell you it was fancy, but we had a tripod stand.
Yeah.
And we'd put the accelerator on it and bring the demo, if you will.
Yeah.
I visited all our key accounts and our sales reps. Say, hey, this one works. Come try it. So and we had a spray bottle in the carry case, so we spray a little water in the hands. All right, what do you think? And I mean, the reactions were just unbelievably outstanding.
Yeah, I can imagine. So the value proposition really hasn't changed then. So let me ask the question. So who was buying the old hand dryers? What was the reason someone was a customer in the old before the accelerator?
Well, again, if it got spec'd, and that's less than 10% of the time. So if a hand dryer got spec'd, they'd buy a hand dryer, and there was that or equal that I mentioned to you, but the default spec was World Dryer, and we had to work our butts off to say, well, yeah, but we're equal. Our specifications are good. Our performance is the same, et cetera, et cetera. But you got to put that extra effort.
So is the person that you got to convince the architects, the designers?
The specifying community. Yeah. If you're going to raise the 10%, you got to get them on board. So that's more of a long-term mission, if you will. But we would go to trade shows for National Restaurant Association, for instance, facility management show.
Yep.
So, and key categories with the marketing term verticals, key categories of users, and convey to those users, hey, this is a good product.
Try this out.
Yeah, and the environmental concerns. Just think about after 2000, people are much more attuned to the environment and sustainability, and so again, this is a source reduction alternative. This is good for the environment. You're not creating those paper towels to dispose of them in a landfill. This is an energy efficient product. It uses 80% less energy, so you're not consuming unnecessary energy when you run a hand or run this hand dryer.
Yeah, and the best green products in my mind are the ones that also have a lower pain in the ass factor, right? So it's like not only do I not have to throw things out, but I don't have to remember to refill the paper towels. I don't have people throwing them all over the bathroom. I got to get someone to empty the garbage cans.
That's labor, too.
Right, exactly.
So the custodian has a lot of other things to do, and you're relieving them of that task.
Yeah, it's just one less thing to do. So you get reduced pain.
But again,
in the
if the dryer works, you don't mind. If it didn't
work,
right,
that's why I was asking.
So that's why we had to correct that opinion.
So what did your market share look like once the accelerator goes live?
Now we truly are the best-selling hand dryer in the world, and our spec rate is 50%.
Really?
Yeah, and that's even with Mr. Dyson on the market. Yeah,
really driving that. So looking backwards, huge success.
We're in terms of units, because we're a manufacturer. I could say we're 15 times our size in revenue, but we're 12 times the size we were before Accelerator was born in terms of units manufactured. Yeah. So I'm happy with that.
And you're 50% spec'd, is that what you said? So 50% of the time,
we're not, now if you spec a hand dryer, we're the default spec.
So let me ask you that question. Have you seen an increasing specification of hand dryers, right? Because there's two ways to grow
absolutely.
the market. One is, do more people, are you more of the time?
Yeah.
But the bigger thing is, can you get the hand dryer spec'd more also? Often. Right, yeah.
And well, yes, obviously it has, but I think there's still a lot of room for that to grow. And we've now, we've developed an integrated sink system where you have and no touch is important in a restroom. No one wants to touch anything.
Yeah. Especially the more public the restroom.
So automatic sensor activated soap dispenser, faucet, and now we built a hand dryer that just comes out a spout right in the sink.
In the sink.
And so you don't leave the sink. You're drying your hands right there. You're not dripping across the room to go to the back wall to use the hand dryer.
No kidding.
So that's
the innovation continues.
Yeah. So yes.
So tell me about that. So where you guys just said, hey, we got to go to the next level. I was going to ask you where the innovation sort of pipeline is gone, moving to. So is that?
I think now cost is always a factor. I
Sure.
mean, that's not an inexpensive alternative, but for restaurants, office buildings, high-end public restrooms, the integrated sink system is
pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
So probably hard to retrofit that, right? The nice thing about a dryer,
you'd have to be designing or renovating your restroom to want to do that.
So what the dryer just goes underneath? Like, where's the motor?
Oh, it's installed underneath, and we have a hose up to the spout, or what we call the spout.
How long is this on the market currently?
3 years.
3 years. Mm-hmm. Wow, I've never even seen one before. That's pretty amazing.
Well, if you go to the MGM Casino in Springfield, they're installed there.
How about the MGM? I've been there once. I'm trying to think about if I saw that. So in-sink dryer, what is it called?
We call it Accelerator Sync, SYNC.
Ah, nice. That's pretty cool. So you referenced the idea that the accelerator is made in America or made in the USA. So tell us about that. Like, why was that important to you? How did you manage to sort of make the product still be cost effective if you got to make it all here?
It's philosophically, it was important to me, and we run a very efficient factory. So, in my mind, if you're efficient about it, you can make a product and sell it at the right price without having to import it, because it's cheaper from China or elsewhere. And we bang the drum on that.
Yeah, that's been a really important.
We're very proud of that.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I know you got to be, they've really tightened up the regulations. You got to be, I think it's what, 75% plus.
Over 75.
Yeah, you
75%.
can't just assemble it here, right? Because I know the
Well,
old
no,
days.
it's not cosmetic, and they audit it. You
Yeah.
can't get the designation without someone comes and inspects your
Right.
manufacturing.
Because I know in the past people would kind of do the thing where they'd order everything from somewhere else and then put it together here and say made in the USA. But those days are over. I mean, if you want, you got to earn it if you want to get it. It means something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
true.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what's the expansion? What's the next sort of phase of the business? How do you think about kind of growth in the future?
Well, I think we're ADA compliance is important. So now ADA compliance as it relates to a hand dryer is no more than 4-inch protrusion from the wall. Well, that makes it difficult to dry your hands. So we developed a recessed wall box because you can recess it the width of the studs and have room under accelerator to really move your hands properly to dry them. But again, there is a demand for that surface mount ADA product at the right price. So we developed a series of models called Thin Air. So we have Thin Air which does do the 4-inch protrusion.
What is that? How does it do it? Or does the thin mean like a thinner air stream?
Well, again, thinner meaning it's
the unit itself.
the unit. Yes, it's thinner than the accelerator. Yeah.
Got it. So you guys have made that happen.
Yeah.
And when you think about sort of the growth of the business and how you've been able to be successful, like what are some of the stuff that you think about in terms of maybe your people or marketing? Like what are some of the successes?
Well, we're blessed with a capable long service group of employees, and we try to make XL Dryer a great place to work.
Has that been an important part of your success, you think?
As of, for instance, I have not raised the cost of group medical and dental insurance since Accelerator was born. So as a payroll deduction goes, you're paying the same as you did 21 years ago.
Get out of here. Wow. That's impressive.
People don't leave.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you just told me you said someone was retiring after 46 years?
Tom Cage, plant manager, who was the head internal engineer on the project. God bless him. He was instrumental in the development of Accelerator. Yeah, 47 years. 47. And his sister Carol, 1 year older, just retired from Excel as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I said, when I say long service, I mean long service.
Something that you think about. Sounds like that's something that you've made a cornerstone of the business and how you've tried to run it.
It's a priority for me. Yeah.
And so what do you think, obviously the benefits is one thing. What else do you do to try and help to get that sustainability? Because listen, I mean, that what I know in this manufacturing industry, everybody's talking about people, mm-hmm. right? So one way to solve the people problem is not lose the great people that you have.
Well, treat the people that you already have well, and they won't leave, right? That's a lot better than having to pay a fortune to hire someone new and train someone new.
That's right. Recruit and train all those things.
Suffer through turnover, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so that's been something you spend a lot of time thinking about?
Yeah. Yes.
So what else have you done? What kind of other techniques do you have besides just, benefits is one thing. What else have you thought about?
Well, hey, not that it was convenient by any stretch, but COVID taught us a few things. Taught us that you could work effectively remotely, mm-hmm. thanks to technology. So we've learned to look at, depending on the role, and I remind the folks in sales and marketing, you can be remote. You're traveling in sales anyway, mm-hmm. so you're used to working remotely, and you can have Zoom meetings and be effective, and do your job and communicate with who you have to communicate with. But what about the factory? They got to be here every day. They got to build the product. Mm-hmm. So they can't work remote.
No.
So I got to appreciate that, and throughout the pandemic, they showed up every day.
Every day.
It was very, very appreciated.
How do you kind of keep the company cohesion, right? I mean, just someone being around for a long time. Do you guys do events internally? Like, how do you sort of keep the camaraderie going?
Yeah, we do employee appreciation type events, and we'll have our semi-annual sales meetings where the field sales team will come in and they get an update on all our marketing. But then we get the production managers and our customer service team together and always have a nice dinner together. So, and these folks communicate a great deal over the course of time, so that they get to know each other a little better. That's an important ingredient.
You having fun?
Yeah.
What do you like the best? You can, I talk to a lot of business leaders. I talk to a lot of people, and I can just sense how much you've enjoyed this ride.
It's been a good ride. It's been a great ride. But my beloved is after me to retire because I'm 72 years old. I'm not quite ready for that, but I did make my son, Bill, the chief operating officer. He came to Excel right out of college, and he's been along for this ride too. And he's been in charge of sales and marketing, but now he'll be in charge of operations as well. And
starting some succession planning.
Yeah. So I'm gonna phase down, not phase out, but phase down a little bit. I promised my wife I would do that, but I want to see Accelerator 2 on the market. So
is that there's a new accelerator coming?
Yeah, can't say too much about that yet because you don't want to sell from an empty wagon, but yes,
we're not done innovating.
Yeah,
I love it, Dennis. It's been awesome hearing the story. I love people that have a passion for what they do and do great things. So it's been really cool. I'm going to flip us over to rapid fire round of questions, start to wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Red Sox or Yankees?
Red Sox all the way.
There we go. I knew I liked you. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Oh boy. Well, they both buy a lot of
dryers
from us. So you're putting me on the spot. But I will admit that I have this phone app and I order a Starbucks latte on the way to work in the morning.
There you go.
But I have a neighbor who owns 50 Dunkin' Donuts franchises I hope he doesn't see this.
All right, well, we'll make sure he skips that part. iPhone or Android?
Android.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Well, we just bought a home in Florida, so I don't know how do I classify
That's not exotic. Yeah,
it's not staycation necessarily, or is it? I mean, I like to use what I own.
Right. So use the house in Florida because we paid for it.
We do like to travel though. So and we haven't been able, with COVID, we haven't been able to do that. But our best friends who got us interested in being in Rhode Island we're going to Bhutan and Nepal in May with them.
Sounds like a man that loves exotic destinations. Yeah. I love it. Sports car or SUV?
Oh, wow. Well, we have 11 grandkids, so it's SUV.
SUV all day. Yeah. Do you have a favorite business book?
Oh, 7 Habits.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you could do something other than be president of Excel Dryer and you had to do it, what would you do to spend your time?
And I had to do it.
You have to do something other than be the president of Excel Dryer. What would you do? And it could be anything in the whole world.
Well, I think if you are blessed with success in your life, you got to give back. I think I might want to try to do something, and I already do. I write a lot of checks and I serve on boards, but maybe I'd like to do a little more in the
community,
give back to the community area.
Oh, I love that. That's good stuff. What's one thing, Dennis, that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think helped propel you to all the success you've had?
I was an Eagle Scout at age 12, and I will quote you the be prepared.
Be prepared. Oh, I love that. What's something you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell young Dennis, and if he'd listen to you, you think it'd have a real positive impact on his life?
I worked too hard at working, and I missed some stages in my kids' lives that I wish I was more present for. And so the advice would be don't miss those moments.
Precious moments.
Precious moments. Yeah.
Picking up that with the grandkids, it sounds like.
And making up for it with the grandkids.
There you go. Yeah. Dennis, honestly, it's been my pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for spending your time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.